Policy proposals by the Department of Social Development to regulations governing the payout of 350 social relief of distress grants may allow more people to qualify. The proposed change increases the income threshold for the means test from 350 to the food poverty line of 625 per month. Applicants will also be relieved to learn that they no longer have to state whether they will require the grant after every 3 months. Joining us now for a reaction is Hoodah Abrahams-Fayker, the National Advocacy Manager at Blacksage. Hoodah, good evening. Good to have you with us tonight here on In Focus. It looks like it's a trial and error kind of situation as far as this grant is concerned. There are certainly adjustments being made on the go. What has led to this latest amendment to the regulations?
We are pleased that the income threshold has been increased to 624 rand. This specific provision was one of the points of contention in the regulations and the one that Blacksage challenged in a High Court application recently. So we challenged that it was retrogressive in that it was unconstitutional by lowering the amount from the previous iteration of the grant. Before, when you applied for the grant, the income threshold was 595, and under the Social Assistance Act, they decreased it. And we believe that the amendment was as a direct result of our court challenge.
Yeah. So my understanding was that if the system, for example, did its regular checks and balances in terms of means test every month, and they found 350 rands in your account, whether it be money that was deposited by your aunt or maybe it's money that you're keeping for your mother, it will kick you out of the system and you wouldn't be able to receive that. Does that mean with this amendment now, if you've got money in your account maybe in the range that is below the 624, you would still be getting your 350?
Yes, so that is now going to be operational from the 1st of August. So unfortunately, it's not backdated in the Blacksage submission that we made on the draft regulations. We did make the recommendations that it be backdated from when the grant was applicable in April. But unfortunately, it's only operational from the 1st of August. So only going forward from the beginning of this month, where you earn less than 624 rand, would you qualify for this grant.
So with this change now, in terms of the barrier, how many more people would need to be coming into this dispensation to benefit from it?
Well, the budget for this grant is 44 billion, which is anticipated that 10.5 million people will then receive the grant. However, we know that unemployment is very high and people are struggling to make ends meet. So there are much more that need the grant, and the whole reason for the grant and its narrow measures was because by DSD's own admission was to keep it strict so that they could keep within the budget. However, because of these exclusionary provisions, much less beneficiaries then were approved for the grant. So although they received quite almost 11.4 million applications, of those applications, only 5.2 million were approved. And to date, or as at the end of June, of those applications, only 3.7 million had been paid.
Yeah, and what then is the plan for those who were kicked out of the system in the previous payout, for example, in the month of June? Do they need to reapply now that there are these changes?
Yes, if they qualify. So, for example, if they earned more than 350 rand but less than 624 rand, they will qualify as at 1st of August. So they would then need to apply now, yes.
Yeah. And the other change then that we mentioned is the 3-month situation. What was your call as Blacksage as far as that situation is concerned? That every 3 months people would need to reapply?
Yes, so there was an onus on the applicant or the beneficiary that was approved that every 3 months they need to confirm that their status remains the same in terms of the fact that they are eligible for the grant. And so now that requirement is no longer needs to be done, but that does not mean that DSD does their own checks to verify that they qualify every month. So that is still being done.
In terms of then the people who could use this possibly to defraud the system or to benefit unduly out of the system, are you satisfied as the Blacksage that enough processes have been set in place, for example, to establish a degree of security and a degree of transparency and integration with all the systems of government so that, for example, if you're already getting a salary from government, you will not be a beneficiary of this, as we saw during the time of COVID?
Since the iteration or since the introduction of the grant, there has been challenges where people who are not eligible are receiving the grant and vice versa as well. And the reason for that it's an exclusive online system that is being used. And through that, they verify people's eligibility by looking at government databases and doing bank checks. And the databases that are being used are not up to date. And as a result of that, there are cracks where people who shouldn't qualify do qualify, and those who should qualify are not receiving their grant because the systems are not accurate.
Yeah. Reflect then, Hoodah, for me on the framework that the department is saying is currently being finalized to link those who are beneficiaries of the social release of distress grant with sustainable livelihood initiatives. In other words, a view that we will be able to provide these individuals with targeted skills so that they don't remain in this grant system forever, but they are able to be exited and have a chance at being employed.
Well, in the context of this challenge that we have with poverty, inequality, and unemployment, social assistance is a constitutional obligation, but that does not, it must be complemented by job creation. So there's no issue with giving the opportunity to people that are unemployed for jobs, because that in itself is a way of dignifying people because they want to work. You know, it's a myth that people don't want to work, but unfortunately, there are not enough jobs at the moment.
Yeah, and what are some of your suggestions? Have you made contributions towards that framework, and how government, because we know government tends to come up with great policy positions, but it always fails when it comes to implementing some of these things. So have you had any kind of input in as far as that sustainable livelihood initiative?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of our right to comprehensive social security, while we support that the initiative in terms of an economic recovery plan, part of that plan would be working towards and introducing a basic income grant. And so that is where Blacksage has been making submissions in terms of policy frameworks.
Yeah. And are you hopeful is work happening around that? I mean, we know also it's one of the issues that were discussed at the ANC's policy conference held a couple of weeks ago, whether there is any traction to the calls that are being made towards a basic income grant and the model of how it's going to be funded sustainably.
We've had previous engagements with the Office of the Presidency, and we are continuing those engagements so that we can take opportunities to make sure that there is a policy framework in place when this grant comes to an end in March 2023, because there has to be some framework in place so that people are not destitute when this grant comes to an end.
Hoodah, we appreciate your time. Thanks so much for coming on and helping us in that conversation. That is the National Advocacy Manager for Blacksage there, Hoodah Abrahams-Fayker.